Hey there guys, I'm going to be breaking down what I believe is the first essential thing you need to learn about out of the park baseball today, and that is the scouting system. Now, if you do not or have not heard me specifically talk about scouting before, this is definitely one you're going to want to watch all the way through. This is very important information. It is literally franchise altering stuff, okay? The way you evaluate players is definitely the most important thing in the game. So, first thing we're going to go over is how the scouting system works, and then we're going to talk about why a certain type of scout is just so much better than every other option available, and also how much money you should be putting into your scouting budget. So, the way the scouting system works, I'm going to start by explaining highly favored tool scouts since they're the simplest. So highly favored tool scouts are what I would consider pure scouts. They evaluate players exclusively on their ratings, their editor ratings, basically how good the player actually is and how ratings determine how players can perform. Scout just directly translates that, the highly favored tool scout that is, into whatever rating system you are using. So the way it works is the scout evaluates a player. So let's just do it this way. Imagine a bell curve, just a standard probability distribution. The center is the player's actual rating. You select a random spot on the bell curve, and wherever that is on the x-axis is the rating that you get from your scouts. Now, the more accurate or the better your scout's rating is, the more money you have into that particular area of scouting, the more accurate you're going to have that rating be. But highly favored tool scouts, they just take that rating and give it to you, whatever they come up with there. The more you scout, the more accurate it's going to be, because then you'll have multiple points to choose from. You're more likely to hit the center. But once you start moving away from highly favored tools, you get into the ability, the normal favored tools even, neutral scouts, favorability, highly favorability. You start mixing in statistics and age to those ratings. And then the scouts start to lie to you, and it is nothing short of that. They lie to you. They take the rating, they evaluate players the same way that the highly favored tool scout does, okay? And then they mix in statistics and ratings to augment the rating that they get when just evaluating a player to be something else. So, for example, a young player who walks a lot could be fully developed on their eye, but a highly favorability scout might think that, okay, well, they're young and they're walking a lot, so that eye potential's got to be through the roof. You might get like a 75 graded eye when they're really only at like a 45 or 50 eye. And it can really throw your evaluation off. It's very important that you do not evaluate players using a highly favorability scout or even a normal favorability scout. Just do the highly favor tool scout. I'm not sure exactly how much the statistics and age are mixed into the highly favorability scouts, but I think it could be as much as 50%. Now, if you want statistics in your rating, that's fine, but do it yourself, okay? Get the actual accurate rating from the highly favored tool scout and then augment it yourself. Do things with it that are where it is, because you don't know how your scout is augmenting the ratings. I honestly have no idea how they do it, but it's definitely augmented. Get the highly favored tool scouts, and that is, as I was going to say, there's one type of scout you should always have. It is highly favored tools. Now, what would it take for me to consider even using just a normal favor tool scout? So think of it this way. You are moving from point A to point B, the actual rating to the scout's rating with the highly favored tool scout. With any other type of scout, you're moving from point A to point B to point C. You have a whole nother thing tugging you away from the actual rating of that player. And that point C is just going to totally throw things off. Even with the normal favorite tool scout, you have that point C. That's not there with the highly favored tool scout. So a highly favored tool scout has a much larger margin for error with their actual scouting process than even a normal favorite tool scout, because a larger change in that first scouting point for the highly favored tool scout is going to be much better than having two points that are slightly smaller from the normal favor tool scout. So really what it takes is you have to have no highly favored tool scouts who are even average in anything, and you have to have a normal favored tool scout who's legendary in everything. And the circumstances under which you will actually be taking even just a normal favorite tool scouts are so rare that you're basically not going to do it. Always, 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 99.99999% of the time, be taking the highly favored tool scout. If you think that you're not taking a highly favored tool scout because there's a normal favorite tool scout that's better, you're probably wrong. I've not seen one game where it actually makes sense to go with a highly favored tool or anything less than a highly favored tool scout. Now, with scouting budget, where do you want to set that? It does, after all, have some level of play on how accurate you scout your players. So there's a couple of things to the scouting budget. You got your raw budget, which is the total money you use in scouting players. And then you have your 4 categories of scouting: major, minor, international, and amateur, okay? Now, major league scouting is much easier to scout. You can do it with a minimum budget of $4 million or whatever it is, and like 8% budget. So I mean, you're looking at a tiny fraction of money there going to the actual Major League Scouting because you don't actually need to do it. Your scout's going to have a very good read on those players because it's easy for him to do. Minor League Scouting is harder than Major League Scouting, but actually not that difficult. I generally recommend putting your percentage at about 20. So for a minimum of $4 million, that's going to be about 800,000 into minor league scouting. You'll generally get accurate reads there. With a highly favored tool scout, that should be enough to get you the update on players who have had ratings jumps before anybody else has them. And for international and amateurs, those are the 2 toughest categories to scout. International includes scouting discoveries, international amateurs, international free agents, etc., and players in international leagues as well if you have those enabled. Amateurs is your draft prospects, basically. So I generally recommend setting your amateurs to about 30% and then using the remaining 42 or whatever you've got left on international players. You'll generally get accurate reads with a minimized budget. You can run a $4 million scouting budget and still get very accurate reads on your players if you just splurge, and it's not even really splurging, and spend $1 million on a really good highly favored tool scouting director. Now, if you've got a scouting director who's below I'd say great in all of the areas, then you need to start looking at increasing that scouting budget. I wouldn't go over $10 million in any circumstance. You don't really need to. But if you've got a not as good scouting director, you might need to start upping that budget a little bit. But again, pretty much every single situation, you're going to have at least a decent, highly favored tool scout available, and you can keep that budget at the minimum and still get accurate reads. It does not make sense to spend $20 million just to have a slightly more accurate rating evaluation, especially if you're using anything other than 1 to 100, where a slight difference is still going to be the same rating on your rating scale. So yeah, overall, highly favored tool scout. Do not put money into your scouting budget because you do not need to do so. And yeah, highly favored tool scout. Can't say it enough. Get a highly favored tool scout. All the other types of scouts lie to you. They mix in things that are not actually part of how the players play to their evaluation and their ratings. So if you've got any questions about it, definitely ask me, okay? Don't go out and sign a non-highly favored tool scout. That is really the biggest piece of advice I can give to anybody who is playing out of the park baseball. It will make an astronomical difference in your ability to acquire good players and have accurate reads and play the game well. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you on the next video.